Thanks for checking out today's episode of The Experience Curve, where we explore the personal journeys of accomplished individuals, breaking down the steps they took to get where they are, which I hope just might inspire you on your own path forward. Today, I'm joined by Alyson Baxley, who shares her journey from corporate life to entrepreneurship and expat living in Portugal. Through her blog, Renovating Life, Alyson has become an invaluable resource for individuals dreaming of building their own business while living and working abroad, and empowering others to navigate the complexities of relocation and find success in their ventures. We'll explore the challenges and triumphs of building a life overseas and uncover the practical steps and mindset shifts needed to embrace the digital nomad lifestyle. This episode is not just about Alyson's journey, it's about how her experiences can inspire you to break free from fear, seize new opportunities, and create a life of adventure and fulfillment on your own terms. Hey, Alyson, thank you so much for your time this morning and joining me on the show today.
Of course, I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, and for people listening, I was excited. One, Portugal, I read a lot about, specifically, real estate, golden visas. We talked a little bit offline before we started, but you were kind of ahead of all that and moved out there from New York a few years back with your family, and jumping into all that, you had this traditional advertising career, kind of left that behind for self-employment. So what, for people listening, what was the sort of decision that you made to pursue self-employment?
I had been freelance for a long time, so I learned pretty early on that I liked to have some control over my work life. A lot of people in advertising end up going into the freelance side of things because they can have a little bit more creativity when they come in for a project, or can take extended periods of time off. Those were all appealing to me, but really I just enjoyed meeting a bunch of new people, working at a bunch of different agencies, and not ever feeling like I was sort of on that hamster wheel of daily work life. So I liked being able to change things up pretty quickly and often. I enjoyed the freelance life, and I think that was a good indicator that I was not meant to be a lifer in the system. So eventually, particularly after COVID and things, everybody was working remotely, and then they started wanting people to come back into the office. I thought there's no way that I'm ever going back into an office. And after having two kids and then transitioning back, I thought it's like having a third child. Like, no, I'm staying home. I'll work from home. That's fine. Eventually, at the point where we were all able to work remotely and my husband could work remotely and we could envision, what living abroad looks like, it made more sense for me to pursue my own passions. And to be honest, I got, a bit tired of having to get 13 approvals on a toothpaste banner when I could be making a website that actually helps people. So, that's kind of where my head was at that time. And, 3 years later, I don't think I made the wrong choice. I'm very happy.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what I talk about on this podcast is people taking that jump from full time or just becoming their own boss, answering to themselves. So you're coming to what, I guess if you count right, you and your husband lived abroad. I believe it was in 3 different countries for school work type of thing. But you at the time you were in Brooklyn, New York. And what sort of drew you to Portugal? Again, I only know, obviously it's a beautiful country. I know a lot of people that have gone there and had a great time. And then again, reading about people with real estate and the golden visa, moving there and just enjoying the lifestyle, and how it's laid back. Obviously, it's more cost effective depending where, I was told. But coming from New York, a big city like that, obviously the biggest city that we have in the country, here to Portugal, what sparked the move to Portugal specifically?
Right before COVID hit, my husband had been presented a job opportunity to go to Budapest for 1 year. And we hadn't lived abroad since having kids, and we'd just been waiting for the right opportunity to come along. So when he got that offer, we jumped at it. And right as COVID hit, everything got canceled, everything was shut down. The project was on hold indefinitely. And we were stuck in our Brooklyn apartment and didn't know, how long any of this was going to last, like, as no one did. And all of a sudden we were both working from home, and imagined what, life abroad could look like in a more permanent way. So we were planning to do this temporary sort of 1 year getaway to Europe. And then we started thinking even beyond that. So instead of waiting for another job opportunity to come along, because with COVID, we had no idea how long that might take, we just decided to figure out how we could make it happen on our own. And in deciding where to go, we kind of sat down and had, a quick 5 minute conversation like, well, what's our favorite place to be? Like, where would we go back to? We don't normally travel back to the same places more than once or twice. So we've been to Portugal 3 times at that point, and we said, wow, it would be really cool to live in Portugal. And, the weather's great. It's really safe. It's really, got a lot of history and culture. So it just made sense. And then after making that really quick decision, we had to go back and then, backtrack and think, okay, can we make this happen? What are our visa options? And how much does it cost to move to abroad? We had only ever done it in a context where someone else was facilitating the move. So this was a totally different venture for us to basically do everything ourselves. And speaking of the golden visa, yeah, this was in 2021, 2020, 2021. So when you Googled move to Portugal, the majority of the websites that would come up would be trying to sell you on this idea of buying real estate and getting a golden visa. There wasn't a lot of information really online about how to get some of the other visas that are available. We moved over on a D7 visa, which is for passive income, because that was before they had the digital nomad visa that they have now. So we would have moved on the digital nomad visa according to the current regulations. But yeah, everybody wanted to sell you this golden visa, and we didn't have the money for the golden visa, so we had to figure out other ways. And it was just a lot of work to try to figure out all the information, which in turn was why I started my site, so I could try to help other people, find the information that they were looking for.
Yeah, I think at the time golden visas were, we talked offline again. I think what 280 for a remote or like a remote area, and a half a million euro
Mhm.
for sort of like the Lisbon, Porto, right, areas that
Anything
are more
coastal.
populated. Porto. I know my pronunciations are awful, but I think people who were trying to take advantage of that, because I think you could rent those properties out as well, which would made it. Who knows? There's a lot of gray areas depending on who you spoke with. But regarding jobs, did you go with, okay, your husband found something remotely, or did I know he does accounting, right? So how did that play with, okay, we know we want to go there. We had a quick, obviously, 5 minute conversation, but now we know we want to go to Portugal. We figured out the visa type we can use. And obviously, if that's passive, that means I can't remember when I last looked. Maybe it was 1,000 or 1,500 euro a month was passive, but maybe that's way off at the time I checked. But how did that work with him and his career?
Like I said, with COVID, all of a sudden he could work remotely. He works in the film industry and does accounting on TV and film projects. So typically he was required to be either on set or in the production offices for any work related time. So this whole idea of him being able to work remotely was new to us. We were so used to him having to be in an office every day. So with being able to work remotely, he was working on a project at the time, and he asked them, if I were to move out of the country, could I continue this job since I'm working remotely anyway? And they said, yeah, it's no problem. Come to find out, we were here for about a month when they decided that it was not going to work for them. But luckily for him, he's found another studio that loves working with him no matter where he is. So he's working on, I think, his fourth project with them because he works project based. So I think if he hadn't had that opportunity, it would have been a lot harder for us to think longer term because we would have to figure out what our income stream would be. The blog to this day is very much a passion project, and I'm trying to monetize it, as you know. But it's a long, slow road. It'll get there, but it wouldn't have been something that we could have survived off of for in the last 3 years. So luckily, he's been able to keep those film projects coming in pretty steady from the US. So he does work remotely for US studios, which is nice.
Yeah, that's
The
great. And
salaries here are so low, like you can't you can't work here unless you're working even with a startup or something that has international backing or something like that. Because the minimum wage here, which I think you were talking about with the passive income, is, I want to say it's up to about 820 euros a month is the Portuguese minimum wage. I mean, that doesn't even pay rent for a lot of people, even Portuguese people. So it's hard to find jobs here that can support you. I think the best way to keep your costs down and your quality of life up is to have remote income from outside of Portugal.
Yeah, that's huge. I would imagine, going and again, people who come from other countries like America there, it does have an effect, I was told, on the rents going up even more, right?
Mhm.
But what about children? Were they young enough? Was there any concern like, okay, we're going to take them to a foreign country, and the two of you know, hey, you both love it there, and he has the income, so you figure out what you're doing. Was there a concern there? Or were they too young where it didn't really, it stinks, but it's not the worst thing ever. They'll look back and be, happy that
Yeah,
you did it.
that's the hope, right? That's the goal, that we're giving them so many opportunities that they don't even realize yet, to be global citizens and world travelers and learning multiple languages. Like that's kind of, the high level of what we're going after, but they're too young to really understand that now. Right now it's just about the day to day. My son was only 2 when we moved, so he was very much, you know, completely out of it when it came to the planning and the packing and the traveling. He was a turned 1 right when COVID hit, so we've been bouncing around for the last year and a half anyway, trying to escape New York
Sure.
and stay healthy. But my daughter was 5, and she had only lived in Brooklyn, only lived in the same brownstone apartment that we'd lived in for 6 years, only knew her friends that she'd grown up with and gone to daycare with and went to the park to play with every day. So for her, it was a little more difficult. And we kind of had to backdoor the idea with her. We said, we're just going to go for a year and see if we like it, which was not true, but it was the only way we could kind of introduce the idea to her without completely devastating her. Parents have to do what parents have to do. So
Of
we,
course.
kind of
Yeah.
just made it seem somewhat temporary until she could fall in love with Portugal the way that we already had. So, which did happen. She's very happy here. We went back to Brooklyn last summer and visited some friends, and while she was nostalgic, she definitely was ready to come back to Portugal. But
That's awesome.
they've already learned Portuguese. They're bilingual. I mean, they can speak Portuguese 100 times better than I can, and they do it all day long at school. So they
Yeah.
have adjusted really well.
That's great. Yeah, so your husband obviously he's been able to keep his stuff going, and then kids obviously like it. And but regarding the visa, going back to that for people listening, is that stuff you do online, or is it a combination of I have to do this part online, then when I show up, to Lisbon or whatever, you have to go in person? Because oftentimes I hear about countries where the sort of like the paperwork, everything takes a long time. It's a very slow process for people who are even maybe renew a visa on time. They still don't get any sort of feedback past the date, right? Is that sort of any sort of experience that you had in that sort of capacity, or was
Well,
it
I can
pretty
tell
easy
you that
considering?
it'll only take one pinky finger and 57 steps on and offline to get your visa. No, I'm kidding. But it is a process. And the bureaucracy here in Portugal is quite cumbersome. They love paperwork, complicating things into many more steps than it actually needs to be. But I've heard that other European countries are worse. I haven't experienced it firsthand, but I've heard Italy is really terrible. So, yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things, like you got to pay to play, right? You got to follow the steps and do the work to get to live the dream. And that's why we're here.
Yeah, yeah, the dream. Exactly. Once you start to figure out, okay, my lifestyle, maybe you're like you said, you're in this apartment, your daughter's 5, same kind of, she doesn't really know anything else. Now you can take your kids, would they have learned 2 languages? Would they have had all these experiences, right? It's hard to put a price tag on that versus, right, just staying where you are and always wondering what might have been. But for you started this blog, Renovating Life, right? For sort of like a guide for those considering, a similar leap to what you took. And my question on that is like, what motivated you to share your experiences, and like, what's the hope readers will gain from being on your platform?
Like I said about the golden visa being so prominent when you search for visa options for Portugal, not everybody has the means to go for the golden visa. And one of the biggest draws for the golden visa is that you can invest your money, get the visa, and you don't actually have to live in Portugal for more than 7 days a year. So for a lot of people, it's an investment visa. It's not a residency visa. And so residency visas were a little bit more, I don't know, mystified when you go to try to find the information. It's like, this person says this over here, and then this person says this over here, and this lawyer wants to charge me $5,000 to make it happen, and this Facebook group says that they have all the information. You just have to search the files. It just became really cumbersome to figure out. Yes, maybe it's 57 steps, but why hasn't anybody laid out these 57 steps for someone online and just told them how to do it and what to do and how to do it? And so as I was gathering the information for myself and realizing how difficult it was to navigate the whole process, I figured if I'm going to start some kind of travel related, family related blog or platform for people to be able to help them, then this would be the perfect opportunity. I can take the knowledge of what I learned throughout the process and help people so that they don't struggle quite so much as we did when we were trying to figure it out.
And like, when you say struggle, what, was it mainly around the bureaucracy and figuring out like, where do I fill this form, or who do I turn it into, or who approves this, or just the waiting, or everything?
That's part of it for sure. The bureaucracy is something that can drive you a little crazy. I like to call it bureau crazy. Whenever I type, my pinky finger like always wants to go to the Z, bureau crazy. And the fact that things are slow, that's part of the problem as well. People have a hard time coming from the United States and New York particularly, like, why is everything taking so long? Why don't people return my emails instantly? Why is my lawyer taking my money and it doesn't seem like they're doing anything with it? Understanding the process, knowing how to navigate the process. And then I think there's a lot to be said about knowing how to settle in effectively so that you don't feel isolated and you don't feel like you don't have someone who can kind of hold your hand through the process. I was lucky enough to make some really great friends, and I had an immigration lawyer who kind of turned into my friend because we happened to live in the same town. And that's someone you can call on whenever it's like, okay, you just went through this 2 weeks ago. Exchanging your driver's license, for example. You just did this 2 weeks ago. Rather than go search the internet and find 50 different answers, can you please just tell me what you did? And that's kind of how I see my blog. Like, I'm going through this and I'm telling you what just happened to me. And maybe that's not going to be your exact experience because in Portugal, you really never know. But I can at least tell you what happened to me, how I got through something, and it will be helpful in some way to you. So that's, what the whole goal of the blog has been, to help people so that they just don't have to wonder, struggle, search and search and search and be subjected to, the crazies in the Facebook groups.
Right. Yeah. As I was going to say, I would think a lot of people would probably defer to, like, again, a social media group, or, online communities where they can sort of get, but then sometimes they become just, I've been on them myself. And oftentimes you get conflicting information, or people just start arguing with each other about why their area of the country is better than others, or, just, it feels a little confusing to me. So having something streamlined like you're doing obviously has to be a big relief for people, especially coming from places like America, because you're doing it firsthand. You did it recently. A lot of people I will see online, yeah, they did it 15, 20 years ago. So a lot's changed then, but you're pretty much,
Mm-hmm.
within the last 3 years.
Yeah, and things have changed since I've been here. So it's definitely something I have to keep in mind and make sure that things are updated and accurate because that's part of the whole point of it, right? To make sure you're getting accurate and reliable information to help you get through the process. So it's nice to have someone, an actual person who can be there to answer questions for you. But if you don't have that person, then you have my blog.
Yeah. Well, like, so for people who are wondering, like, okay, this sounds fun. I would love to go do the sort of, again, digital nomad or whatever it might be. Is there a lot of paperwork when it comes, even like your husband, right? Doing gigs for studios or you starting this company. Is that hard as a foreigner when you're over there? Or is it get a little easier when you have these people to lean on? Like I'm sure, yeah, your immigration attorney might know other attorneys or other, people that
Mhm.
could kind of guide you along with that. Or is it just as hard when you're trying to sort of work from, these new countries that you're in?
I mean, please don't ask me about taxes. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, finding the right network of people I think is the key. Knowing that you have reliable people who actually know what they're talking about is a wonderful thing and hard to find, to be honest. I mean, between immigration lawyers and tax experts that you'll have the same conversation with five different tax experts and you will get five different answers to the same question. So it's because there are so many Americans and other foreigners moving here, and there's situations that come up that just haven't existed before. In Portugal, salaries and taxes are fairly straightforward. You get paid 14 times a year. The government takes out the taxes and the Social Security, and you file your tax return, and that's it. Like, there's really not, you don't itemize your deductions. There's not like all of these loopholes and things like there are in the US. And so as an American, filing your taxes where you have to file in the US first, or really depends on where your income comes from. Please, again, don't ask me the details, but you have to file in the US regardless. And you have to file in Portugal. Who gets what money? Who gets the taxes first? Like there's so many different ways that situation can go, that having a good resource for that is really key. And not just taxes. I mean, if you wanted to open up a business, my business is based in the US, so I didn't have to deal with that. But I know a great consultant who helps people. That's all she does, is help people buy and start their businesses. So yeah, you have to find the right people, and finding good people is hard, but having those people on call is, really key.
Yeah, and for you, coming from, your advertising background, when you're putting this blog together, what sort of, like, I guess, tactics I might say are you pulling from your days working in that field to sort of put this together to make it as interesting and exciting for someone who, again, wants to take the same leap that you and your family have taken? How are you sort of bridging that gap, right? Okay, I'm trying to help people out, but I also have this, like, really amazing advertising background to sort of establish yourself as, an authority in this field of, like, expat living.
I did every facet of advertising that you can think of, from direct mailers to, online videos. I focused more in the digital space, but I started in traditional. I went to school for traditional advertising, print and television. I started as a print production designer. So I have the design background. I've done branding and logos for other people and companies and startups. And I think it just all came together in a way where I had the branding and the design and then the digital background to be, able to build a website, and also the big picture thinking that as a creative director and art director you have to come up with bigger ideas for campaigns and things like that. So kind of just all molded together. And again, I work for myself. I don't have to get approvals on anything. If I say I want it like that, I say I want it like that. So that's the
Yeah.
beauty of being the boss.
Exactly. And, because I liked your website when I checked it out for the first time, and even the name, right? Like, Renovating Life. I thought that was, pretty striking. Like, how did you come out with that name?
That name came to me in a dream, I swear. I'm not like a dream journal person or anything, but I had been thinking about doing a family travel blog. I was trying to figure out what the niche was going to be, other than just family travel. Like, how am I going to position it so that it's unique? And again, my advertising background is like, it's not enough to just put your trips up on a page. Like, you've got to have a hook for people, and all the things, right, that go through your head as an advertising person. But I had just been trying to think of what my hook was going to be. And yeah, I woke up in the middle of the night and just Renovating Life was there. I put it in my phone. I picked up my phone and made a note really quick and went back to sleep. And when I woke up the next morning, I was like, wait a minute, what happened last night? And I opened up my phone and it was on my notes app and it said Renovating Life. I had to let that sink in a little bit because in my sleep stupor, it made a lot of sense. And then I had to be like, okay, but what does this mean for travel and for families? But yeah, I think part of my advertising background helped to like think of a big picture idea. So it's not just, the Baxley travel blog, which it could have been. It's how are we changing our lives on a big scale and on a day-to-day scale. We're renovating our life from top to bottom. We're moving from Brooklyn to Portugal. So
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I mean, and the domain was available, all that stuff kind of was like, a good dream to have, So, and then when you're putting the website together, are you involved personally with like graphic design and things like that, or do you have contacts and vendors or friends or whatever that you sort of help, or you farm that out to, or they sort of sit down and conceptualize with those people?
as far as the website and like website, all my social media, I'm literally a one woman show. I do everything. I do all of the blog writing. I mean, sure, I hire ghostwriters sometimes, but only because I have so many things I want to write about and I don't have time to write them all myself. So if I want to publish as much as I do, then I have to get a little bit of help. And yeah, I use a few people to help me. I have a Pinterest manager because I do not understand Pinterest at all. So like I let him deal with that. But I create all of the content that goes on the website. I create all of the Instagram and TikTok content, which, is not even a lot because, again, it's just me. And I feel like it would be really hard for me to farm out that kind of content to someone who is not doing the actual travel and is not having the experience. So, like, for me, it makes more sense, even if I publish less often, to write it and to make it myself because then it feels more authentic to me and our story. And also when I write a caption about how, I don't know, we just took a 3 city trip over spring break, if I gave that to a social media manager, like it's going to be very cut and dry, right? Took took a 3 city tour, but if I can pepper in things that happened along the way or choose footage and photos that show the kids running around in puddles in Prague or whatever, like it doesn't matter, but that kind of stuff feels to me more authentic whenever I make it myself.
Yeah, no, authenticity for sure. Like, again, me looking at your site, I just assumed you had, other people helping you. So that's pretty, crazy to see that you did all that by yourself because it comes across as, very, very nice, very professional, and I think when you're looking at it, there's a ton of content.
Thank you. That really means a lot.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, and you had mentioned too a little bit, I think in the beginning of this, virtual summits. You have forthcoming course. So obviously the growth and monetization of Renovating Life is coming together, right? So when you're putting together those two concepts, like the virtual summit and a course offering, how does that sort of develop, for someone listening? It's like, okay, like I got my site together, but I would love to do a summer. I'd love to do a course. Like how does all that come into play? How do you start that from the top down?
It's been a huge learning curve, I will not lie. When I started the blog, I did not know how to blog. I did not know anything about search engine optimization or alt text for images or, anything. I didn't know anything. And I just made the site pretty. I put the information I wanted and I launched it thinking, okay, now what? Now what do I do? How do I make money off of this thing? And so it's been I'm 3 years in and I'm just now really feeling like I'm figuring it out. So it was a long, slow process because I did not educate myself before. I just jumped in. And as you can tell with my 5 minute conversation to pick Portugal as where we're going to live, this is kind of how I do things. I just say I want to do something and I do it, which is how I ended up doing the summit last year. I had participated as an attendee in a blogging summit, had never been on a virtual summit before, had no idea what it was, enjoyed the process as an attendee, and thought to myself, somebody should really do one of these for moving to Portugal. Why hasn't anybody done that yet? And within a couple of days of just having that thought, I said, I guess I have to do this because I don't know anyone else is doing it. So I can be the one to do it. And within want to say that was February. I had the summit in May. Within the first month of starting the planning, I had 45 speakers signed on. I had basically, I used a platform to host everything. And we had 5 full days of 8 hours of content of people just sharing, invaluable information with people who are interested in moving to Portugal. And so I'm planning to do the next one. I started my planning last week, again in May this year. So that's another thing I'm working on all by myself.
And how do you advertise for these virtual summits? Is it through your website, SEO sort of things, or are there other companies and maybe the one you attended, that you can kind of partner with to sort of get the word out about your own summits?
Typically, with these kinds of events, you're partnering with the speakers that you invite in to have them share with their networks. So you are bringing in people who have valuable information for your audience and who have a similar audience to you, but that maybe have overlapping but not the same exact audience. So you're hoping that the people that you bring in will promote the event to their audience, and then exponentially between 45 speakers, if everybody tries to invite people in, then you end up with a lot of people getting the information that they're looking for. But we had about 3,500 people sign up last year. At that time, my email list was under 1,000. I would say like right around 1,000. My email list is now 3,000. So I'm hoping between that and it being the second year and getting some bigger speakers on board, that will be able to make those numbers look small.
Exactly. No, the email list is huge to have,
I'm a little
because
competitive, can you tell?
no, it's good. It's refreshing, and that's sort of what this podcast is about, right? Hearing from people that just go for it, right? So I think that's certainly you and your husband, right, and your children, and what about the course, right? So what's this course going to be about? Is it basically a course of like how to get there to Portugal?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, it's going to have sort of 3 sections: before the move, executing the move, and after the move. Because I feel like those 3 sections complete the whole process of moving, planning the move, doing the move, and settling in. You can't just forget people once they get here. Like there's still a whole 1/3 of the process of, I guess, immigrating that needs to be addressed. And so I have just released a new free checklist on my website. So that is, if you take a look at the checklist, it's got, I want to say like 15 pages of things that you need to do and or think about, and then resources to help you do that. But I didn't go into the how to do it. It's like, here are all the things you need to do. Here are some resources that can help you. But when the course launches in the summer, then that will go into the how. So it'll be the checklist, but on steroids, because I'll actually explain to you like all the details and the ins and outs of making those things on the checklist doable and easy.
Right. So will this be something like people can sort of download and take with them and come back to whenever they want?
Yeah, it'll be a digital course. Yeah, self-paced digital course, something that people can just log into when they're ready to learn about a certain topic. They can just log in and find that video and learn about that thing that day. Because that's part of the process of the move. Like it is a somewhat linear thing, but you might need to skip to step 20 before you tackle step 13. It just depends on what your family situation looks like. So it'll be something that people can binge all at once if they just want to kind of soak it all in and then go back to specific topics, or they can go in and just kind of tackle each topic as it becomes something that they need to get into.
No, that's good, because I think a lot of courses you see don't really take that into account. They'll say, "Oh, just take step 1 through 20 and, then you'll be fine." And like you said, well, this person might be married, this person might be no job, they have a job, they can, everyone's got a different situation, so to be able to sort of bounce around, I think is very very beneficial for people more than you think.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be fairly robust. I mean, there's the reason I thought to do it is because at the moment there's for moving to Portugal, maybe 2 or 3 other courses on the market, and I haven't gone into them. I don't know exactly what they teach, but there's a lot of people who will take your money and say, that they'll do it for you when in reality, they can't do a lot for you. They can help you do things and teach you how to do things, but there's a lot of steps that you physically just have to do. Gathering paperwork, getting it, sent off for the apostille, things like that, like things that are not something that a lawyer can just do for you. And then there's a lot of information on Facebook groups and expat groups that the information is not bad, but it's not set up in a way that helps to guide you through the process. And that's what my course will do. It will help you understand and implement in a way that feels much easier than just gathering all the information yourself.
Right. Yeah, and like I said, the boards I've been on before too, again, there's no just it's not laid out very well. It's just a lot of people that are kind of going back and forth giving pieces of advice, but they all seem to have a different path. So it just to me it just gets super confusing. So having something like you're putting together, it's like I know you trust you was it know like and trust Alyson. So I'm
Yeah.
just gonna you have to take someone's advice that you believe is telling you the truth and someone that's done it again recently, because again someone who's done it back in the 90s or something, it's going to be a different, like you said, it's changed a lot since you started your path, in 2021.
Yeah. Yeah. So that will be launching. Let's see, the summit will be in May, and that will be launching at the summit.
That's so funny. That's what I was going to ask. I was say, so when the summit comes this summer, how how much farther along will the course be? So it's sort of in tandem.
Yeah. So I'm working on getting the course outline set up and getting the first few sections and modules ready. And then when we launch, it'll be something that drips out over the next couple of weeks until all of the content is there. And I'll be doing a beta group as well. So that will help me sort of refine things or add things that are missing. Because even as I go back and look at the free checklist I put together, I've already thought of more things that could have gone on the checklist. And it's like, okay, there will be a V2 at some point. But for now, it's like, perfect is I don't know the saying. What is the saying I'm thinking of? Perfect is the killer of good or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Some saying. It's like my perfectionism gets in the way is basically what I'm trying to say. So I just have to say it's good enough for now.
Yeah, yeah, that's not a bad thing, right? When you're trying to guide people on such a major, decision to try to be as perfect as possible. And something that struck me when you mentioned Prague and your kids, I think a lot of people who are interested in doing what you did, hey, work from abroad, digital nomad kind of lifestyle, how to put that all together, but also the part of like just going and enjoying the fact that Western Europe is very not compact, but you can get to things a lot easier than you think. So, how do you think for people who want to have this sort of lifestyle and move abroad and to somewhere like Portugal, how are you sort of blending like the professional with the sort of the fun, the exploring the new places and cultures and having these experiences with your family? Like, how much is that playing into your decision making?
Oh, a ton. We love to travel. We love to travel. It's one of the biggest reasons why we wanted to be in Europe because anytime we ever had enough time to go on a longer trip, we would always come to Europe. I mean, going to California is the same amount of time going to London from New York, but I never went to California. I think I went for one work trip and one time to see friends that had just moved there. So, but if you ask me, do I want to go to London? Oh yeah, let's go. Let's go. I'm in. So it's just that was part of what we were looking for was that European lifestyle and the ease of travel. And what's funny is now that we've been in Portugal, there it's you don't notice it until you're here, but it's kind of far down in the corner. Like it's kind of far from Europe. Like Spain's right there, and then you've got France a little further. Italy's on the other side, but like if you start saying, okay, now I want to go, we went to Finland for the holidays. That's a 5 hour flight almost, which, you don't think of at the time. You think, oh, it's Europe. Everything's within 2 hours, right? But it's not totally true. But price wise, I mean, and we're going to France next week. It's a 2 hour flight to where we're going, southern France. So And I think our tickets were something like $80 a person round trip, like something ridiculously low where you'd be silly not to take advantage of that kind of thing. Like, I don't know why anybody would move to Europe if they didn't plan on exploring Europe. Like, if that's what you want, then go to Nebraska. I don't know. Sorry, Nebraskans. But it's part of why we wanted to be here, and giving our children the exposure to the different countries. And my daughter's been traveling since she was a baby, so it's not new to her to like hop on a plane and go somewhere, but now we just get to do it a lot more often.
Yeah, yeah, you are right. Like Portugal, you are the western part of Western Europe, right? So especially on the coast, and Spain's kind of there, and then France, but again, having those again affordable plane rides are a whole different world, right? So
Yeah.
how about like people who, regardless if they want to do move to Portugal, more about just interested in sort of monetizing their passion, right?
Hmm.
You're doing it through blogs, you're doing it through courses, right? You're sort of building Renovating Life into to a brand, and it will grow and grow and grow. What advice would you give to people who, hey, they're just kind of getting started, but they don't really know where to start?
I would say educate yourself a little bit before you get started. Like, whether or not you want to learn how to make a blog or learn how to create a digital course or whatever, just take a course on doing that thing before you start. Because that's, I think, where I slowed myself down. I knew how to design a website and I knew how to make nice content, but I didn't know a thing about what makes a blog monetizable, or how does a blog actually make money. I had no idea. I just thought build it and they will come, right? Like, that's the theory, but it's not that easy. So it's a slow process, but you can speed things up if you do things right from the start. And so learn from my lessons, don't do that. It's kind of like the blog itself, like, learn from my lessons, don't struggle, just learn how to do it first and then do it better.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I that's great advice, because I think people will, they again, I'm like that as well. You think of something and you just want to jump on it, and it's like a low patience that I have to try to get things done. That I think sitting back, education, taking the time, getting feedback, listening, having others kind of give you some guidance, and doing it more of a slow build is going to pay off in the end than just rushing and doing things wrong right away.
Yeah. Yeah, because then you'll end up having to backtrack and fix things. And, you know, it's it's not a terrible way to do things, because if I had waited to take some kind of course about how to blog and make money, I might not have ever built a blog. What ended up happening was I was freelancing for an agency, and the gig ended, and I thought, oh, I better start this blog idea before I get hired by another agency. And so I started it and started working, full days on it, and then never got hired by another agency by the time we moved. And I kind of stopped trying because I was so into to building the site and everything. And so if I hadn't pushed myself to just get it going, and I was just doing a digital course thinking about it and learning about it, then maybe I wouldn't have started. So maybe it's a combination of find the right course
Yeah.
to teach you, or the right mentor or coach or teacher or whoever that will get you started right away, but that will get you doing it the right way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, surround yourself with the right people. So besides renovatinglife.com, where would be the best place for people who are listening that want to connect with you or follow you, or just learn more about you? Is it renovatinglife.com the best way?
Renovatinglife.com. I'm on all the different socials, but I'm probably the most active on Instagram. So that would be at renovatinglife_blog. Go to the website, download the checklist. If you're interested in Portugal, you can see it's not an easy task to move abroad. But I also have more content that I started publishing over the last few months and will continue to, just about Portugal in general, and more travel and lifestyle type stuff. So there's a little bit for everybody up there.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for your time today, and just kind of breaking down how you've done everything. Seems like you've been there so long, but it's only been 3 years, so it's very cool to see how you're building, Renovating Life, and how it's growing, and how you're kind of putting everything together as becoming this authority on expat life, and getting yourself out to Portugal. I'm jealous. I think that anyone listening, it's something where you're going to look back and be like, man, I'm just so glad we did this and didn't just sit back in New York and continue the grind and just the same lifestyle that we had. And you're kind of taking chances for you and your family. So, thank you for sharing that story and you just explain how you're putting this business together. It's a lot to learn from in hearing from you.
Thank you so much for all that. I really appreciate any kind of feedback I get, but I love when it's good feedback. It's been a long road and, 3 years in, and I feel like I've barely gotten started. So watch out. You never know what's coming next. And I just appreciate you having me on. It's been a pleasure.
You too, Allison. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of Experience Curve. Please take the time to share this podcast with a friend or colleague to help get the word out about my show.